Welcome back to Davinci Resolve 18 free version video editing tutorial for beginners, part 2. This video assumes you've already watched part 1 in this series. That video is linked in the description. You could also click on the card that's in the upper right of this video right now to watch part 1 if you've not already done so. We'll pick up right where we left off in part 1 here. Let's start by opening the media pool and restore our opening motion graphic clip like this. Through the magic of editing, our organized bins are now back and I'm now in the music bin. I can double click on the music and it will go into the viewer. We can see it's a waveform and I can set in and out just like a video clip if I wanted to bring it into the track like so. Or I could drag it over to the timeline viewer just like a video clip and select a placement option there. Since the clip is audio, Resolve will automatically only add it to an audio track that exists, or it will create one if there are none. I've cleared the in and out, and since I want the entire music clip, I'll select the append at end option on the timeline viewer and add it to our music track like so. Pressing Shift-Z to zoom, we can see the music track is much longer than we'll need, so we'll trim it up at the end of our video once we're finished. I'll use Control plus or Command plus on the Mac to zoom in a bit here. I want our intro graphic here that we're going to use to fade in at the start from black. To do that, I hover over the clip, and at the ends of the clip, these little white dots will appear. These are handles that we can drag into the clip to create a fade in or fade out like this. This also works on audio clips to allow you to fade the audio up from silent or back down to silent. As I drag this handle over, Resolve tells me how many frames I'm dragging over. It will change to seconds, minutes, and even hours as you drag further along, but I just want a 1 second fade in, so I drag until I see 01:00 for 1 second and no frames. I'll do the same on the opposite end of the clip to fade it out. Now, with our playhead at the start, you can hit home to put it there if it's not there already. I hit the spacebar to play it back. We can see we get a nice fade in and the clip plays with the music and then fades to black at the end of playback. That gives us our intro graphic for our new video. As a quick aside here, I want to make sure that a few trimming concepts about what Resolve is doing are crystal clear to you. When we move our cursor over the end of a clip like this and we get the single right-facing bracket cursor, if I click on the end of the clip, I've selected the cut point, and Resolve color codes that cut point red or green. In this instance, it's red, indicating we're at the end of the physical clip. There's no more frames in the clip past this point. Moving to the opposite side of the clip and getting my single left-facing bracket, if I click and select that edit point, Resolve colored it green to show that there are more frames past this point. If I click and drag that selected edit point to the left, it reveals more of the clip since there are extra frames on the left side of the clip, whereas on the right side, I can't trim past this point to the right since I'm at the end of the clip. If I trim to the left, it creates more spare frames and changes the edit point's color to green, and when I move back to the right and to the end of the clip, it goes back to red. These extra frames are called handles, by the way. Notice the white frame that Resolve has created around the clip. This shows us the actual size of the clip so we can quickly get an idea of the size of the handles we have on either end of the clip. If we have an edit point with 2 clips like this, we can also select it and it will select the edit point on both clips. It will color code each side green or red to indicate the presence of handles. Let's extend the trim on this clip here and eliminate the handles on the left side of the clip and bring it up to the ending edit point of this other clip here. Now, when I select the edit point with the double brace cursor, we can see we have red on the right and green on the left to show where handles are available for trimming. Based on this instance, I could trim to the right and create handles on the rightmost clip and not to the left unless I have those handles. By trimming to the right, you can see our edit point is all green now, indicating we have handles on both clips. Trimming to the left, Resolve stops me when it runs out of handles on the rightmost clip. Trimming these two clips over here, you can see we have plenty of handles to trim both clips simultaneously. This is referred to as a roll edit. Notice that in the timeline viewer, we are shown the ending frame of the left clip and the starting frame of the right clip to allow us to precisely create our roll edit. Just wanted to make sure these concepts are clear to you. Let's get back to our edit project. Next, let's add some text to our opening shot to introduce the topic of the video to the audience. In order to do that, we'll need the effects library, and we can open that with this button at the top left here labeled Effects. Inside of the effects library, things are broken down into a number of categories. I'll collapse these for easier viewing here. Toolbox at the top, then Open FX, and audio effects at the bottom. The one that we want is the toolbox. Within the toolbox, we have 5 categories, and titles is the one we'll use here. I'll click and drag this text tool here down onto our timeline above our opening graphic video, creating a new video track like this. I'll extend the ends of it a little bit by clicking and dragging the ends of it. When you hover over the end of a clip or other element in a track, you'll see the cursor change to this curved bracket, and that indicates you can click and drag to extend the end of the element if it has handles. Title clips, by the way, have infinite handles on either end. I'll close the effects, and with the text element selected in the timeline as indicated by its red border, I'll open the Inspector pane by clicking on this button in the upper right. The inspector lets us change a variety of parameters and apply some effects to whatever element we have selected in the timeline. With nothing selected, it will show us a set of default controls, but they won't affect anything. At the top is the video pane, and next to that is the audio pane, where we can change volume, pan, pitch, EQ, and some other settings. Clicking on the video clip, we can see that there are a bunch of parameters that we can change that affect the video clip. Note that all of the other panes along the top, such as audio, are disabled since this clip is video only, and none of the other panes will apply to it. From here, I can change the zoom of the clip or its position, rotation, cropping, and compositing, as well as a variety of other adjustments. We'll look at a few of those in more detail in just a bit. Clicking on our title element, we now see we have a new pane in the inspector that allows us to modify our text overlay element. The top item is what we want the text overlay to say, so I'll set it to the Jones Family Summer Vacation. Notice that our timeline viewer is blank and shows nothing, and that's because the playhead is at the start of the fade in from black. If I put the playhead over the text, it shows us what our text looks like overlaid on our graphic video. The white color of the text doesn't work very well over the graphic as it gets lost in other white elements. We can move the text using the position controls down here, X being left and right and Y being up and down. We can also zoom the text on the X and Y axes here. Note that there's a link icon, and when enabled, it forces a zoom to occur on both axes at once to maintain the same aspect instead of stretching it in one direction or the other unevenly. This allows the zoom control to maintain a proportional zoom. We can also change the color of the text by clicking on this color patch here. You can click on the color patches that you see here, and your changes immediately reflected in the text so you can see if it's going to work for you. You can also just pick an existing color from the screen using this tool here. Very handy if you need to match colors between the text and another element in the video that is showing with the text. Hit Escape to get out of the screen color picker tool to cancel it. You also have the typical color controls that you find in color pickers in most applications. I'll accept this red color that looks worse than the white and see what we can do with it. We'll add a stroke to the text, and that'll create a colored outline. Right now, I can set the pixel size of this black stroke to say 3 so we can see it. Let's try a green stroke and see how that looks. Now we can actually read the text mostly. I'll add one more pixel to its width and make it a bit more readable. Below stroke we have drop shadow. We can choose the color of the shadow like this. Again, we can use pick screen color, and this is not limited to what's in the timeline viewer. Anything on the screen is usable, like this green patch over here. You'll notice that there is no drop shadow, and that's due to the X and Y offsets being at 0 or directly behind and obscured by the text. We also have a blur and opacity or transparency control here for this. I'll give the X offset a positive value and the Y a negative value like this. That way the shadow looks like it's being created by a light coming from the upper left. Let's darken the green a bit so it's more of a shadow. Finally, down at the bottom here, we have background. Background will allow us to put a background behind the text to make it stand out even more. Sliders let us adjust the outline, width, height, corner radius, the center of it, and the transparency or opacity of it, just like the opacity in the drop shadow. With the height set to 0, there's no background displayed, so we increase the height. Now we can see the background. I can see the width is a bit too wide, so we can adjust that in like this. Corner radius has a default value, but it will let you set the corners to be square like this. I'll increase the opacity so we can see it better here. Now you can see that the corner radius will go from square all the way to an ellipse. An intermediate setting gives us a nice set of curved corners, so we'll go with that. I'll tweak the width and height just a bit here. Obviously, with the background, we can clearly read the text. We can set the color of the background if we like. We can also set an outline color and size. I'll set the outline to 5 pixels and set the color to the same as the text color using the screen color picker. Now we have this nice outline on the box. We can increase its size up to 30 pixels max. Okay, now we have a nice little title for our video. The text element sports the same fade in and fade out controls that the video and audio clips have, so that we can use that to fade the title in and out like so. I'll turn off the inspector since we're done with it for the moment. Now I hit the home key so we can start playback from the start of the video, followed by the spacebar to play it, and here we go. Okay, I think that will work for our little bit of introduction. Let's open the media pool and start adding clips to our timeline. I want to get a clip that has some snow. Here it is down here. We'll double click it to bring it into the source viewer. I'll set an in with the I key and move the playhead over a bit and set an out with the O key. I'll drag it over to the timeline viewer and select the append at end option. We can always change the in and out after the fact, by the way. It's not written in stone. You'll always have the option to trim a clip once it's in the timeline. Setting an in and out and then using tools to add the clip to the timeline is referred to as a 3-point edit, by the way. Now that we have multiple elements on a track, we can jump between cuts with the up and down arrow key as previously mentioned. Let's add some text to the snow shot. I'll close the pool and open the effects again and grab another text element to add to the snow clip. I'll just drop it into the timeline on top of the snow clip and size it to fit. Again, I'll have the text fade in and out like before. Instead of having the video fade out and into the snow clip, what I'm going to do is to add a cross dissolve or transition effect. If I hover over the point where the two elements are butted up against each other in the timeline and get the double bracket cursor like we used to perform the rolling edit trimming earlier, and right mouse click, I'm offered to add a cross dissolve transition. The cross dissolve is offered with a number of different durations, but we can change that as you'll see in a moment. So again, if you pick a duration, it's not written in stone. We'll choose this 6-frame cross dissolve like so. Now Resolve is telling me that it needs extra frames at the beginning of the snow clip to achieve this effect, and since we set the end point at frame 1, there are no extra frames or handles for it to use at the start. I'll cancel the transition so that we can fix this issue. So to overcome this, I will get rid of our snow clip from the timeline and reset the endpoint so that we have some handles. Another way to do this would have been to trim the clip right in the timeline, but I want you to get used to setting in and out points using the source viewer. I'll leave the out point and do another append at end just like so. I'll resize our text element to match. Now when I tell it to create a cross dissolve, it has no issues and creates it as requested. Now when we play the video over that cut point, it dissolves from one clip into the other. To make it a bit more pronounced, I'll set it to be a 48 frame dissolve. I'll move the playhead back before the opening title fade and we'll play it from there. As you can see, it makes a very nice transition between the clips. Notice that the dissolve created this little box across the cut point, and if we hover over either end of it, our cursor changes and it's indicating that we can click and drag an end to create a custom size for the transition. If we click inside of the little box, we've selected it, as you can tell by the orange border it has. So at this point, I can press a delete key if we wanted to get rid of it, for example. Let's make it a bit longer. I'll remove the clip again like so. I'll reset the in and out points on our clip so it has some pretty big handles on it. And remember, it never hurts to have lots of handle space like this. It gives you more options and flexibility in the edit with bigger handles. Now I append to end yet again, and our clip is a lot longer in the timeline. I'll resize our text element once again. Now I add the 48 frame cross dissolve back in like so. I can hover over its little box end and click and drag to make it bigger like this. I can drag it out to the ends of my handles, and now we can play it back and see our really long dissolve. I kind of like it that long. I think I'll leave it like that for now. Returning to our title element here, I'm going to trim it so it starts after the transition and does not extend to the end of the video like this. I'll turn off the effects and open the inspector with the text element selected as indicated by its red border. Our title is still set to basic text. I'll change it so that it says, "We are so done with winter." Our text is hard to see with all of the white in this scene, especially if I was to use the position tool here and set the Y control so the text is down in the snow, which is actually where I want to put it. If you want to reset a given setting in the inspector, you can click on the circle arrow next to the parameter or double click on the parameter name. If you want to reset them all at once, the circle arrow at the top resets everything. Now, returning to the title tab, we can add a stroke, and I will use black for good contrast. We can click and drag the size. 2 pixels looks pretty good. We'll add a drop shadow again. The default of black will do. We'll increase our opacity a bit to make it pop a bit more. Now set our offset to the right a little and down slightly. And now it's super readable. Let's take a quick look at what we have so far. Okay, I think the transition is a bit too long, so I'll resize it like this. Okay, let's have a look at that. It's better, but I think we can go even a bit shorter. Okay, that should do it. All right, let's add some more content. Okay, I'm going to add this hummingbird clip into the timeline by just dragging it into the timeline like this. I've taken the liberty and added a new audio track and named it Clip Audio to accommodate the humming sound of this hummingbird. Just by dragging it into the timeline, Resolve would have created the audio track for me, but I just happened to create it here and name it. I want to talk about snapping for a moment. When I move the clip close to either the playhead or another clip, Resolve will try to snap the clip up against one of these. As I move closer to the playhead, for example, the clip jumps to that location, and this is called snapping. This applies to audio clips as well. It assists in the precise placement of clips in the timeline. Sometimes we don't want this effect when we're placing a clip, and we can turn it on and off using this magnet icon in our toolbar right here, or press the N key to toggle it on and off. With it on, you can see this clip wants to snap to the other clip as it approaches it, and with it off, I can freely move the clip without that effect occurring. I leave it on most of the time as I find it very useful, helps me avoid having gaps between my clips in the timeline. Okay, let's see our new clip here. Okay, that looks good, but we need a title for this clip as well. It's just a bit long for my taste, so I'm going to trim it up a little bit here. I'll turn off the media pool, and this time, instead of just getting a title element from the effects toolbox, I'm going to duplicate an existing title. And we'll duplicate the snow title and bring it over to the bird clip. We do this by selecting the clip with a click, and then hold down Alt on Windows or Option on the Mac and drag that title element over, and it creates a copy that we can modify that won't affect the original copy in any way. This works for any type of element in the timeline: audio clips, video clips, titles, anything. Now I have a duplicate of that title. I can customize it for the bird shot. I'll zoom the timeline here with Control+. I'll open the inspector again so we can customize our title. I'll set it to "We Are So Ready for Summer." Looks very readable, and I'm happy with the position, so I don't need to adjust those things. This is the advantage of making a copy of the title. It also allows you to keep things pretty consistent in your videos. Again, I'll make the text fade up and back out before the start and end of the clip, just as we did previously with the snow shot. All right, we're going to add another clip to our edit here. Opening up the pool, I'll select the clips with no audio bin. We'll use this bin for the rest of our edit here. For our next clip, I'm going to use this sunrise clip. For this clip, we're going to do a special effect with it to spice things up a bit. I'll set an in and an out point for the clip. I want the sun to start out about here and end about here. I'll just drag it into my timeline. I'll drag it to the left and butt it up against the bird clip. We'll zoom in just a bit with Control+. We have another video track above V1 that was created when we added our first title element. That track is called V2. Normally I would just name it titles, but since we're going to use it to create an effect, I'll call it titles and FX, like so. Now I'll put the sunrise clip up onto V2. I hold Shift and click and drag. The Shift key ensures that the clip doesn't move left to right at all and changes its horizontal alignment. We'll get rid of the pool and open the effects pane. I'll grab a text title just like we've done previously. I'll place that title under the sunrise, and notice we don't see the title. It normally starts out with the phrase basic text in the center of the screen, but since the sunset is above it in the tracks, it gets the priority and obscures the title track for us. I'll resize some of the UI here so I can better see the video tracks like so. Shift with the mouse wheel lets me set the height of the video and audio tracks like so. Now, if I disable V2, we'll be able to see the text element below the sunrise. I need to see the text, so I'll leave the V2 track disabled for now, and then we can see and edit the title element. We'll set the text to be summertime in all caps, and I'll add an exclamation point. For what we will do here, I want to leave the text color to be white, otherwise our effect won't work. So be mindful of that if you try this effect on other things. You need to have the text be white in order for this effect to work. I'll change the typeface from this Open Sans default to the Impact typeface. This typeface is present on both Mac and Windows by default, by the way. The fonts are listed alphabetically. Impact is a nice, large, bold typeface. I want it to be even bigger, so I'll use the font size parameter to make it almost as wide as the video frame like this. I'll go over to the settings pane as I want to make the text taller but not any wider, and we'll do that with the zoom parameters over here. As previously mentioned, the zoom parameter has X and Y settings, and they're linked by default, so if you change one, the other will automatically change to maintain the proportions of the element being zoomed. Since I just want to adjust the height, I'll click the link icon and turn it off. Now I can adjust the Y setting and make the text taller. Okay, I'm happy with that. It should work for our purposes. Now we go and adjust the sunset clip. I'll re-enable the V2's track. I click on the sunrise clip just to make sure it's selected. For the sunrise clip in the inspector, we have a setting called composite. It has two parameters, mode and opacity. Opacity controls how transparent the video clip will be, and mode allows us to specify how we want the clip to blend with any clips that might be below it on the timeline. I'm not going to explain each of the blend modes. Go ahead and play around with these on your own time and learn what they do based on their names if you like. What we want to do is to treat the text as a mask element, and to do that we'll need the multiply mode. Modes are listed alphabetically, by the way. Once multiply is selected, presto changeo, the text now becomes a mask for the video clip. Let's play it and see how it looks. It seems a bit short to me, so I'll select both the sunset and the text element by clicking and dragging the mouse in the timeline to create a lasso that lets me select multiple items like this. With both selected, I can click on the edge of just one of them and drag it, and it will resize both at once. The green edge lets me know I have frames to spare, and notice it's active on both the sunset clip and the text element. Again, the white box shows me the rest of my clip that's obscured by my current in and out points. Okay, let's look at the result. Alright, I think that'll do. Now for the finishing touch to our special effect here, I'm going to animate the text. I'll click on the text element to select it. I don't need to disable V2 now since I can see the text clearly. I'll come over to Settings in the inspector and re-enable the link icon between X and Y for zoom. Now I'll click this diamond here, and this will create something called a keyframe. This allows us to set a keyframe at some point in time in the timeline for a given element. Then we can change the playhead position forward or backward and change the keyframed parameter, in this case the zoom setting, and Resolve will automatically animate the change between the two keyframes. By setting my first keyframe here, I tell it to start the animation at this point. For this, I want it to start after the word summertime has been on the screen for a moment for the audience to read it. Now I move the playhead over a bit to say here, and I can change the zoom setting to what I want it to be at the end of the animation. Unlike setting the starting keyframe by clicking the diamond, just changing the parameter for something that already has a keyframe will automatically create a new keyframe for us. Now we have the text zooming in to reveal the entire sunset frame. Notice that there's a little arrow next to the diamond. This means there's another keyframe earlier in the timeline for this parameter. If I click that arrow, it will move the playhead right to the location of that previous keyframe like so. Also note that the diamond keyframe control is orange, but it's only orange when the playhead is on a frame with a keyframe defined. Otherwise, it will remain gray. Now, if I hit the right arrow and advance one frame, you'll see the orange indicator is gone, and now we have arrows that point to the first and last keyframes in the text element. Moving back one frame, we return to the first frame with a keyframe, and our diamond returns to orange, and the little arrow only points to the next keyframe. So you can use the arrows to jump between keyframes in the timeline. Okay, let's play it back and see what we have here. Okay, I think that the animation is a bit too slow for my taste. Don't forget you can use left and right arrows to move one frame or shift left and right keys to move 1 second at a time. Since I was before the first keyframe in the timeline, I get the right arrow, so I want to adjust the keyframe timing a bit, so I click on that arrow to get to the first keyframe. On the text element in the timeline, we have a couple of keyframe controls. We're going to click on the rightmost one that looks like a diamond. This opens up another little pane under the text element, and that'll show us our keyframes and allow us to adjust them. This works on text elements like we're adjusting here, or video clips or audio clips. They all support using these keyframe controls. Zooming in, we can see there are two white dots, and these represent our keyframes. Again, looking at the animation, I think it takes too long. I can click on a keyframe like this. It'll turn orange to let me know it's selected. Now I can drag it over closer in time to the first keyframe and speed up the animation. Now the animation happens a lot faster. If it's a little too fast, not a problem. We just select it again and drag it to the right like this. Playback to check the final result. If we didn't like where it started, we can change the left keyframe just as we did with the right one. But let's say we want to maintain the timing but move the start point of the animation. I can click inside the little window and drag out a little lasso and select both keyframes like this, and then drag them both to a location where I want the animation to start and maintain the same timing. Earlier or later, whatever suits my fancy. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'll close the little keyframe window by clicking on that same diamond icon in the lower right. I think the sunset clip is slightly too long, so I'll select it with the text element and shorten it a bit like this. Now let's see how it transitions from the bird to the sunset. Okay, I want to have the sunset fade in, so I'll add a fade up on the text element. I don't need to fade the video clip up, as the text element will control its visibility due to the fact that it's masking the video. Looking at the results, I like the fade, but I don't think the audience has enough time to read the word summertime. I'll open our keyframe adjuster window again and move the keyframes down a bit, making the word persist a bit longer. Now we play it back and see the final result. Okay, I'm good with that. Now at the end of the bird clip, the text fades before the bird clip is finished. Let's say that I want it to fade at the end of the bird clip and I want the sunset clip to start immediately after. Since the bird clip and the summertime text element are butted up against each other, I can edit the end of the bird and the start of the text at the same time with the double bracket tool that appears at the edit point like so, and do a roll edit. Notice that when we play it back through, the summertime text is white at the beginning, and that's due to the fact that we need to extend the sunset clip over so it covers all of the text element like this. Now with our effects and inspector panes closed, we're going to add our final elements to our project here. Back in our media pool, I'll select some more clips and add text to those as well, and I'll speed it up as there's nothing new for you to learn during this section. Now for our final closing sunset shot, I'll add this text. Can't wait to go back. Return, return. Thank you so much for watching. I hit enter there to create a blank line to separate the two lines, but they're too far apart in my opinion. So to fix that, we use the line spacing control in the inspector like so. We adjust it until we're happy with the distance between the two lines of text. I'll go over to settings and adjust the Y position and move the text up more towards the center of the frame like this. I'll also add a little cross dissolve for this final sunset clip like so. I'll fade it out for 1 second at the end. Now I need to adjust the music track since, as you can see here, it extends far past the end of our video and I want to trim it up and fade it out at the end. I'll move the video tracks up by clicking and dragging the timeline separator bar like so, and zoom the audio a bit with Shift and the mouse wheel. Now I'll unlock the music track so we can edit it. I'll click on it to select it and move the playhead to the end and then press Control B or Command B on the Mac to cut the audio track at the end here. Pressing B on the keyboard will activate the tool, or by clicking on the blade icon in the toolbar. To return to the default selection tool, press A on the keyboard or click on the arrow icon in the toolbar. Now, anytime I click in the timeline with this blade tool active, it will create a cut wherever I click, regardless of the timeline playhead's position. Whereas Control or Command B will always cut at the point where the playhead is at in the timeline. I'll press A to get my selection tool back and select the end of the audio that we want to remove. Now I just press the delete key and get rid of all that extra audio. Now when I hit Shift Z, we'll see that our little project here, instead of it being super small due to the length of the music track previously, it fits nicely on the screen and we can see all of our cuts. I want to point out one final editing tip here. Let's say I want to cut out a portion of a clip. I'll use the blade tool to cut a chunk out of the middle of a clip. The process of removing that chunk is the same for a whole clip or just a portion of it that I'll demonstrate here. I'll activate the blade tool with the B key here and we'll use this snow clip to demonstrate. So I'll click here to cut the clip and click over here to create another cut. And now I have a chunk in the middle of the clip like this. I press the A key to switch back to the selection tool. Now I have this section of the clip and I'll remove it by clicking on it to select it and then press the delete key. Now as you can see, it got rid of the chunk and it left a gap in the timeline. I can click on the gap and it turns gray to indicate that the gap is selected, and I can press delete once again to remove the gap, and that pulls the timeline over to the left like this. I'll undo the deletion of the gap and the clip. I'll select the chunk of the clip again, but this time I'll press Shift Delete. This removed our chunk and pulled over the timeline to the left, filling in the gap in one step. This is referred to as a ripple edit since it ripples the timeline to fill in the gap of the edit. To recap, the delete key will remove what you have selected in the timeline and leave a gap, and Shift Delete will do a ripple edit where it removes the selected item and closes the gap created in the timeline. Okay, I'll undo all of that and we can continue with our finalizing of our edit here. I want the music to extend just a little bit past the end of the video fade out so that we get a nice, clean, smooth ending to our video. To do this, I'll turn off the snapping so I can easily move the end of the audio and not fight the snapping effect. Now I can just drag it out a bit like so, turn snapping back on, and now I can add my final fade out. I'll use 2 seconds for the fade like that. 1 second during the video fade, and 1 when the screen is black. I'll hit the home key and let's have a look at our video. I'll hit Control F or Command F on the Mac to make my viewer full screen. I'll hit the spacebar and start play, and here we go. Okay, that's our edit at this point, but I want to make a couple of more changes. The first change is to give the video's narrative a bit of perspective as to who's saying it. I'll change the text for this little beach shot from wife to I, so it looks like the Jones family matriarch is telling the story. Besides, I misspelled bathing. I love should do the trick here. I'm going to show you some other transition options that you have here as well. We'll add a new video transition from the effects pane to spice things up a bit. Be careful with fancy transitions, they can be a bit distracting for some viewers, so a little can be a lot is the rule. For this, we'll add a few fancy ones just so you get a feel for some of the things you can do here. We'll add one to this clip of the wife on the beach and the father and the son on the beach. I'll close the inspector and open the effects pane like this. The top section is where the video transitions are, so I'll open up that section. In here, you'll find a veritable horn of plenty full of transitions for you to choose from, and I recommend checking all of them out as you learn the application. For example, I can use this burn away effect here just by dragging and dropping it onto the edit point between two clips that I want the transition to occur between. It works the same as the cross dissolve, and it will need handles if you use it. I can stretch it out or shorten it just as I did with the cross dissolve as I see fit, as long as it has a red outline that's selected, and the delete key will remove it. If I zoom in, we can also see the name of the transition. We can play that back, and you can see it gives this little fire effect transition. It's interesting, but not really appropriate for our vacation video. So I select it, hit the delete key to get rid of it. Let's try this zoom transition. I'll just drop it on the edit point like this. Notice that the timeline has a blue line across the top of it except for where I put the transition, and that has a little red line. It will turn to blue in just a second. This is the render status indicator. In order to do certain types of playback, Resolve has to render that portion of the video that needs extra processing in order to play it back in real time. Typically, it occurs where you've added effects in the timeline, but depending on the format of the videos that you have in the timeline, it might be the whole timeline. It just depends. The red will eventually go away and turn to blue, indicating that Resolve is ready to let you do playback in real time. So we play back our new transition here to see what it looks like. Okay, I like the zoom. It gives the transition a bit of energy. Let's add this rotate transition to the next edit point and see how that looks. Again, we have the red render indicator. Now that it's done rendering, I hit space to play back, and that looks pretty good. Going back to the render topic for a moment, if we look at the playback menu, we'll find the render cache option, and inside of that it says none, smart, and user. As a general rule, you should make sure you have it set to smart, and Resolve will automatically render the timeline where it needs to do it. None turns off rendering, and you won't see the blue render status line and most likely won't be able to play back your timeline in real time. The user option lets you specify when you want something rendered. Resolve Smart Render will only render when it sees the application is idle. Okay, for our final step here, we want to output our video. In the File menu, select Quick Export. Most folks will put their videos up on YouTube or Twitter. Maybe you'll upload them to Dropbox or Google Drive. The YouTube preset is a pretty safe bet for social media posting, so we'll select that here. You can see a summary of the video's output settings on the right pane here. I'll click on Export and let Resolve prompt me for a file save location. It's already chosen the name of our vacation based on the name we gave the timeline. I'll let it export out to my desktop here. Obviously, you can put it wherever you like on your system. I'll click Save now, and it will process our edit and create the final product. Once finished, it will say completed, and you can close the Quick Export Render Status dialog box. Okay, let's quit Resolve and go check our final video. Since I have active saving turned on, Resolve won't prompt me to save, even though it indicates it has changes to save by this edited word here. Hovering over the edited word, it'll tell us when the last save occurred. Resolve will automatically save for us when we quit here. On the desktop here, we have the Our Vacation video. I'll double click it and start full screen playback. Okay, there it is. I hope this video taught you something and was of value to you. I'd highly recommend you watch my short video on my top 10 keyboard shortcuts for Resolve. The video is linked in the description along with a few links to some other Resolve videos that I've created that you can check out, or you could click on the card that's displayed in the upper right of this video right now. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching this. If you liked it, please hit the like so that other folks can find it. And until the next video, take care.